Lentísimo esto. ¿Me escuchas, Marco?
Sí,
Okay, hold on. Es que voy a prender. Listos. Here we go. Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us once again. You can follow these programs and you can, I will provide links to many of the interviews that we've done on this show. But the best way to find these programs and these interviews is on my Twitter account at Mexico Daily and on my personal X account, which is AM Salazar. So thank you, all of you for joining us throughout the years. Well, if you don't live in Mexico City, you may not understand what I'm talking about, but we've been literally living, if you live in Mexico City, you'll know what I'm talking about. We've been literally living under siege by the teachers union. And it's been, when you decide to travel in different parts of the city or try to cross from one part of the city to another, traffic is usually pretty bad, but in the last 3 weeks, it has been horrendous. But it has to do with protests by the teachers union and difficulties that the current administration is having in trying to reach a deal with these teachers. That's why I always appreciate today's guest. He's been following us throughout the years, Marco Fernandez. He's an expert on the education system in Mexico and education policies. Marco, once again, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, could you just explain to our audience what's going on? Welcome to the show.
hi, Ana Maria Salazar. Well, unfortunately, we're seeing a new cycle of the teachers' protest that by the dissidents movement of the teachers' union, known as the Coordinadora Nacional de Trabajadores de la Educación. That is the left, extreme left leaning section of the teachers' union, who initiated a protest 3 weeks ago, basically demanding President Sheinbaum to honor her word, because she, during the campaign last year, promised them that she was going to abrogate the law that established the pension system in individual accounts for the teachers, and that was changed in 2007 by President Felipe Calderon, and that the dissidents movement considered that this is an unfair law that produces very poor conditions for retirement for teachers. The protest also was demanding a 100% increase in the salary, despite that the government in the Teachers' Day on May 15 made the announcement that they will receive 7% increase in the salary and additional 2% for benefits. And
Which
on
is pretty
September,
good. It's pretty
yeah,
good.
in fact, it's on top of the inflation. It's beyond inflation. So
Oh,
yes,
okay.
it's definitely in that sense a real term benefit for teachers, and one additional percent on September. In fact, there are two benefits that the teachers receive. One that is called the national unique compensation that increased from basically 10,659 pesos to 11,832, and an additional benefit known as an extraordinary economic measure that the teachers receive since the COVID pandemic. And that compensation increased from 1,200 to 2,000 pesos a year. The dissidents movement said, no, we want, first, finish with these individual accounts. Second, diminish the retirement age so that teachers could retire only in the case of men with 30 years of service and 28 in the case of women. The government said no. First they offer 58 years for men and 56 for women. And a second offer finished being 55 for men and 53 for women.
Right.
In a country where life expectancy is 75, that is a very generous offer. Still, the dissidents movement said no. We don't accept this offer because that is only gonna benefit those who are on what is known as the 10th transitory article in the precisely in the Easter law. Those teachers that didn't switch to the individual accounts for retirement in 2007. That is approximately 20% of teachers. So that offer of changing the age will be only for them, because the rest of the teachers still need to retire at 65 years old if they want to have additional a full
pension, a full pension, yeah.
So what we know so far is basically they finished today their sitting that they have established in the main plaza in Mexico City, in the Zócalo. But they threatened that they will be very pending on the different events that President Sheinbaum has along the country to go and protest during those events, that they are not satisfied with what they have received. In fact, we know by the press that last weekend, the government reached an agreement with Section 22, the section that belongs to Oaxaca, offering them 800 million pesos for new teaching posts and for these additional changes, for these increases in the position in the teaching ladder. No, so the government, when the document was leaked, tried to say that no, that this was not a bribe, that this is a typical fund transfer to Oaxaca. But sincerely, that doesn't seem very credible, because since the education reform by Peña Nieto, all teachers that are considered federalized are paid precisely by the federal government. And in the case of Oaxaca, all teachers are federalized. So this idea that is the amount that usually they send to Oaxaca is not credible.
So let me ask you this, because I listened to you describe what their demands are. And I do think that the president and her team have tried to sit down and in good faith negotiate with the teachers. And the only reaction that there has been is basically what we've seen in the last couple of days, not only in Mexico City, I have to remind our audience, but also in other cities around the country. In the case of Guerrero, there, I think there's been even violence, and they've been attacking some buildings with Molotov cocktails. So and there has been certain level, not minimum, but there has been some violence in Mexico City. It's the disruption that is just driving everybody crazy. But it doesn't seem that the teachers union is negotiating in good faith. I mean, it sounds like, and I don't mean to be mean, but there's a point where there's only so much the government can provide in these negotiations. So they're betting on being very disruptive and to all the events that the president has in the next couple of days, in the next couple of weeks, and just be there and somewhat sabotage. Is that what they're planning to do? Sabotage her events, political events, as she travels around the country? Is that what's going to follow now? Is that
That's
the plan?
threat. That's the threat. I mean, the big problem is, on the one hand, the demand is clearly, I mean, beyond of what it could be fulfilled. There is no public finance that could basically pay for these demands. I mean, these are absurd demands. But also, we need to recognize, as I mentioned, that the problem was the irresponsible promise that the then candidate, now President Claudia Sheinbaum, did last year in campaign. That
Right.
was a problem. I mean, because I don't know what was she thinking when she promised that she was going to abrogate precisely the ISTE law.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they took as their way to say, you were the one that promised. Now you have to fulfill this promise. And this is a big problem because, I mean, in all this discussion, Ana Maria, have you heard any concern on how to improve learning of our kids?
Right.
How to really strengthen our education system
Mm-hmm.
so education could create conditions for social mobility?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the offers that the government did were very unfortunate in the sense that they didn't demand anything to the teachers union in exchange for this offer that they concede.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, I mean, there is this example that is the through sit-ins, through blockades, through protests, through
Mm-hmm.
strikes, the way that
Mm-hmm.
you get additional economic funds for education rather than through your good performance in the classroom. I mean, and these basically blackmail a strategy that the dissidents teachers union has been following since it was
Mm-hmm.
created in the 80s, has
Mm-hmm.
extracted money to the PRI governments, money to
Mm-hmm.
the PAN governments, and now to the Morena government.
But it seems that I guess the problem is they really have measured the level. Uh, they've really measured these governments in terms of how much violence and pressure they can exercise because they're assuming, and I think they're right, that these governments, doesn't matter if it's PRI government, it doesn't really matter if it's PAN part government or now a Morena government, two administrations of Morena government, that the the government is not will not use force to control the protests. So they keep on pushing the limit, and and it could be just making it impossible to move around Mexico City and other cities, or it could actually be the use of violence. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening to us and watching us on as we stream through YouTube Live, that they ask the question, well, why, isn't it time to kind of, they've done the best that they can. It seems that they're not going to concede. Is there anything else the government can do? Is they're just going to sit and wait around until the violence increases, or at what point they're going to have to make a decision to use violence?
Well, the government, through the president, has been very emphatic to say that they are not an authoritarian regime, that they are not going to concede to the provocation, that they are not going to respond violence with violence, etc., etc. It's ironic because some years ago, when they were in opposition, they
Mhm.
even brag and recognize the importance of this kind of teachers' protests when they took over the
Right.
Mexico airport some years ago.
Mhm.
They were very happy. I mean, you can see the statements on the newspapers back then, and now they are suffering the same blackmail strategies that the dissidents movement
Mhm.
has implemented over the years. And it's very clear the strategy, the rationale. On the one hand, they begin to go on strike, provoking that millions of students do not attend classes. Parents obviously are working and they begin to be exasperated. What are they going to do? They have
Right.
to try to find a solution. In the meantime, they affect the businesses around the neighborhoods where they establish their camps and where they conduct their blockades. Literally thousands of millions
Mhm.
of losses are provoked over these businesses, and they take over the tolls of the
Mhm.
highways, and they
Mhm.
extract illegally money to the cars that pass by as supposedly voluntary contributions, but it's
Right.
contributions for their pocket. Uh, and with all this strategy, all the governments basically have just seen, they have never used the police force, and they have concede certain part of their demands.
Hmm.
And through that, they buy off a very, what I call, futile peace deal, because what they have shown when they concede the government, when the governments concede, they have shown that the blackmail strategy pays off. So they create the next incentives for the next round of protests when
Hmm.
when the teachers union sees the window of opportunity. And unfortunately, in this cycle, a very perversive cycle of protests, etc., the big losers of everything is the students. And I mean, we have talked in other occasions about the bad shape of education in Mexico. You wonder why. When you have this kind of behavior, I mean, it's hard to imagine that these are people in front of a classroom with a responsibility of teaching how to understand what you read, or to teach
Hmm.
consolidated math bases so people can solve problems. Of course,
Hmm.
that these people cannot really be teaching effectively. And that's why we have many other problems in terms that people do not transform their life, etc., etc. And we basically, as a society, are kidnapped because of this behavior.
But but this is one part of the teachers union, correct? I
Yeah,
think we need
because the other
Mhm.
one is very clever. The other one also benefits from this behavior, because the institutional part of the union then goes to the government and said, look, that's why you have to negotiate with us.
Yes.
That's why you have to conceive
Hmm.
other governance structures of the education system, because
Hmm.
we are rational. We are not this crazy radical movement. We are the rational ones on the teachers' unions. But to keep the rationale, we also need certain concessions. And they receive those concessions. I mean, it's not surprise that the leader of the teachers' union nowadays is a Morena senator.
Right.
So at the end of the day, this perversive politicization way of operating inside of the education system, combined with a lot of corruption, is what is resulting in very poor results of education in terms of learning.
Joining us today is Marco Fernandez. You know him well. He's been joining us throughout the years. He teaches at the Tec de Monterrey. He's also part of Mexico Evalúa. Let me just ask you this last question. What if you we have a situation that they clearly do not want to negotiate, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and the government, I think, in good faith, has given their best offer without creating problems in the in the in the budget, and creating problems with the other part of the union. Um, what is going to happen now? I mean, they're not even close to an agreement. At what point the teachers union is going to have to either step down and basically return to work, because by the way, all these kids they're not going to finish the school year. At least the ones who are affected by this. I mean, what happens next? I'm just literally scratching my head trying to think, what is the negotiation strategy here? It's just kind of
Well,
it's a negotiation strategy of attrition. Let's see who blinks first. You know what I mean?
I mean, basically that this is movement agree to finish the sitting in Mexico City today. And
Hmm.
they began to remove their camp in the Zócalo. And that's why they threaten that the new phase of their protest is going to be following the events of the president,
President.
and wherever they can to sabotage them.
Hmm.
They have already obtained, because it's not that they have gone empty handed. They obtained
Hmm.
what I mentioned, these 800 million
It's
pesos
a lot.
for dissidents movement in Oaxaca,
Hmm.
the age for the teachers, these 20% of teachers in the old law, I mean, it's not that they went home empty-handed.
Empty-handed, yeah.
And again, and at the end of the day, the situation has been solved as it has been solved in the past
Yeah.
with money and with this perversive incentive to say blackmail in the streets pays off. It's better than just to make the best effort in the classroom. It's not, that does not pay off. What it pays off is to organize, to go make blockades and extract additional economic gains from the government that is in place.
Fascinating. I always enjoy talking to you, Marco Fernandez. Teaches at the Tec de Monterrey. He works with Mexico Evalúa. He's been joining us throughout the years to talk about Mexico's education policy. Thank you so much for joining us here and living in Mexico.
Thank you so much. And I would say, rather than fascinating, very sad.
Yeah,
It's very sad
and it is very sad.
because I mean the years pass by and it seems that it's impossible to improve our education
Education
system in
system.
Mexico.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
joining us. Let's go to commercial break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar, and